Hello, concerned citizens. My name is Veronica. Welcome to Saving Gen Z. I created Gen Z to help awaken the world to the dangers facing our children. Disclaimer. This video is not meant to bully, harass, or incite violence of any kind. I am a qualified medical and therapeutic professional, but the statements made in this video are not meant to be substituted for your or your child's private physician or therapist care. The materials used in the making of this video is permitted under the Fair Use Act. Please subscribe, hit the notification bell, and share the videos. This helps promote the channel and educate the masses. Thank you, subscribers and supporters. Please help me support this channel by purchasing some merch or one of my best-selling books and become a Patreon. I hold monthly giveaways on Patreon and post bonus material. You can also follow me on Twitter. All links will be in the description box below. Now let's join together and build a better today so we can have a better tomorrow by questioning the narrative. Thank you for coming back. This is Veronica of Saving Gen Z. This is part 2 of the Perversion of Justice meeting that was held by the Miami Herald newspaper here in Miami-Dade County in Florida. That is where I am. I was invited to this meeting. I was lucky enough to get an invite. See? And this part 2 features Somy Ali. She is the founder and president of No More Tears, which is a human trafficking rescue. And she also has safe houses, and I hopefully will start working with her very soon. And Julie K. Brown, which is the investigative reporter on the Epstein case. She's on the stage again. And Professor Marcy Hamilton. She is of the Robert A. Fox Leadership Program, Professor of Practice, University of Pennsylvania, and CEO and Academic Director of Child USA. Very long title, but very important, very informative woman. Okay. And of course, this has nothing to do with your gender when it comes to trafficking and sexual abuse. I mentioned in my previous video, I worked in an adolescent psych lockdown facility, and the majority of these children, I'm talking 90%, were trafficked by their parents, or they were brought in from other countries, from other states, part of satanic ritual abuse rings, basically being pimped out or just sexually molested by their families, things like that. Now, in this part 2, they do discuss the Jeffrey Epstein case, which is an international case. Just because it happened here in South Florida and also in New York, remember, this guy had place in New Mexico. He had a place in France. And and in the islands, in the Caribbean, also Greater St. James and Lesser St. James. So he's international. We all know all the people involved with him from all around the world, every skin color, okay, every gender, every race, okay, and what they have in common, they're sex traffickers. Or they partake. They're partakers in the ritual abuse of children. And also, I guess as they got older, women too, but their taste was for kids. The younger, the better, right? For them. So in this part 2, the topic of discussion is how the Jeffrey Epstein case relates to this international world problem. And they cover victims' rights, especially in the United States, and also the lack of victim rights out of the U.S., especially in Pakistan, which is where Somy is from, which is where Somy Ali's from. She discussed that topic, which is very, very interesting. What an amazing, dynamic woman. Wait till you hear what she has to say about her family and her parents and what she went through, what her brother went through, and how she ended up here in the States to to start up No More Tears. Okay, so I will see you in a few. And please, again, share this video, share this information, thumbs up, like it, because you know it's going to be deranked and there's going to be a lot of funny business going on my channel, which again, I apologize it took so long because this was done 5 days ago. Yeah, this meeting was 5 days ago on the 15th of October 2019, and this is the 20th. And I'm finally getting out my second video. Okay, so I'll see you in a bit. Bye. Enjoy.
She's a Robert A. Fox Leadership Program Professor of Practice at the University of Pennsylvania and CEO and Academic Director of Child USA. And once again, Miami Herald investigative reporter Julie Brown. Let's give them a round of applause.
Oh, okay. Go back.
Okay, here's round two.
Sorry about that, guys.
We're going to broaden this story and again learn, put into context what we have seen here in Florida, what we have seen in South Florida, with some, I hope, some guidance as to what we can all do to interrupt the chain of this, the evil of human trafficking and sexual abuse. I'm going to start with Marcy. I'm going to start with Marcy. You have the professional expertise. You were a law professor for 26 years. You're now at youth. When you and I talked a little earlier, when you and I talked yesterday, I asked you what you wanted the audience to take away from your remarks, from your expertise. And you said you wanted them to be upset. You wanted them to be unhappy with the fact that the victims, the Epstein victims in New York, can get justice. But the victims from Florida, for the victims from Florida, justice remains really elusive. Talk to us about that. What's wrong here?
So, the tragedy of child sex abuse in the United States is that we have kept the vast majority out of court. And so they're silenced, they believe that the government doesn't care about them, and too often that's true. But right now, out of the 4 jurisdictions where most of this occurred, which would be US Virgin Islands, New Mexico, New York, and Florida, the only opening that any of the victims has for a civil lawsuit against the Epstein estate is New York. And that's because they've enacted what's called a window. So for 1 year, starting August 14th of this year, the victims can sue, and some are. Now, some of the victims actually were not children. They were 17, 18, 19. For those, we're actually working on a bill that their claims would be revived. But for the victims in Florida, and Florida often prides itself on its good statute of limitations for child sex abuse. But Florida has never helped the victims from the past. And all the victims from the past are essentially just shut out of court.
The window that was opened in New York, was that specifically for the Epstein victims, or is that a mechanism that has been used there in other cases?
So the Child Victims Act in New York is for all child sex abuse victims. So for 1 year, any child sex abuse victim can sue their perpetrator or the institution or both. And it doesn't matter if their claims had previously expired.
Okay, so there is a statute of limitations. However, once they can come forward, they can be granted a window, and no matter how long ago the abuse may have happened, they can sue. Does the abuser have to have been convicted?
No. The abuser doesn't have to have been convicted. The abuser doesn't have to be alive. The abuse has to have occurred, but these are the sorts of crimes people really don't make up. False claims are the least of this universe. This is an extraordinary year for justice for victims. We've never seen this many states consider this many bills in 1 year, or this many bills be passed in 1 year. But Florida continues not to even consider reviving the expired civil statutes of limitations, and no window has been introduced.
What are other states doing that could be a model for Florida?
Well, everybody hears about New York because it's New York, but New Jersey actually enacted a window this year that opens December 1st. It's going to be open for 2 years, and it's good for all sex assault victims, no matter their age at the time of the assault. So it would gather, it would get those older victims of Jeffrey Epstein. In fact, I think I contacted Julie and said, did anything happen in New Jersey? Because we have a good bill. Not enough. But Vermont is really the leader right now. And ironically enough, Vermont's a leader because it's copying Guam, of all places. They just simply erased the statute of limitations in all of the civil cases. So in the future, no one will be able to raise a defense of you're too late to be in court. You'll just have to prove your case. And I think both New Jersey and Vermont are worth looking at. But the last one I would recommend is California. California had a window in 2003, it shut. Lots of victims were left behind, and Governor Newsom signed 2 nights ago a new 3-year window. So they will have enacted a second window for 3 years in California. Victims will be able to sue.
Marcy, can you explain to people why it takes so long sometimes for these victims to come forward?
Sure. So the average age under the best science is 52 to come forward and disclose about child sex abuse. And that is a recent study, and it's a comprehensive study. So what happens? Why doesn't somebody tell your mom like you tell them you broke your leg? Because, a kid breaks their leg, they go to mom, they go to dad, they go to the hospital. They get sexually abused. They don't understand it, and usually they're threatened, and usually, especially in the case of the Epstein victims, they don't have any outlet. They don't have any way of doing anything about it. And then depression sets in, PTSD sets in, substance abuse, all of these things slow down their ability to get to the door of the courthouse. And so if we don't open up the access to justice for adults, we won't know who's abused them as kids.
And often, well, in many cases, the mom, in many cases, or the adult in that child's life doesn't believe them, or maybe believes them, but does not want to start down that road.
Well, tragically, the public just doesn't understand child sex abuse. It doesn't know about it. My pet project right now is I'm trying to get, this is how foolish I am, I'm trying to get the NFL to do 10-second spots with major NFL players, because I want to get to that audience. I want to get to everybody who doesn't want to hear this and understand your child should not be alone with another adult. Some of these rules are very simple, some of them are shocking. Your child should not get a ride home with a soccer coach in his car by himself. So part of this, we just haven't educated the public enough. We've got a lot to do.
Somy, I think you can educate the public. You are a survivor of sexual abuse as a child and also as an adult. Can you talk about, one, your experience and how it led you to do what you do? Tears.
So I was born in Pakistan, and the first time I was sexually abused was the age of 5 by the house help. And I went to my parents and they did not believe me. So the sexual abuse continued till the age of 9. And it happened to my brother as well. My brother was not believed, and he was sodomized by the house help from the age of 8 to 14. So I think that this issue is very, very personal for me, and we really need to believe our children. When we moved from Pakistan and I moved here at the age of 12, at the age of 14, I was raped in a park by a 17-year-old boy. And what I was told by my family is that we did not expect you to be a virgin forever, so don't file charges against this man.
Who told you that? I'm sorry.
My parents. And they said that you don't want to go through the court proceedings and just drop the charges. And even the guy who raped me, his sister begged me when we were in court, because I said, no, I'm going to press charges. She begged me to drop the charges, and she said I was going to ruin her brother's life. And we went ahead with the trial, and he's behind bars to date. So I think we really need to believe survivors, we need to believe our children, and what we do with No More Tears. Some of the cases are extremely graphic, but I want to talk to you about them. The youngest victim that we had was a 2-year-old baby girl that was being sold on the dark web. We work with the FBI and the police departments in Palm Beach, Dade, Broward, and we are also listed with the National Human Trafficking Hotline.
Back up and explain what No More Tears does. You refer to your organization as a second responder.
Yes, so No More Tears is a second responder, so the crime happens. So if there's a victim of human trafficking, typically the problem is, that's what I've learned in 12 years of doing this work, that the FBI calls me, or the police officer calls me, or the Miami State Attorney calls me, and they say, Somy, all the shelters are full. There's no place to put the victims. So we have safe houses, which obviously I can't disclose. In those safe houses, when they're in there for 6 months, we educate them. We treat them for HIV. We send them to school. We give them therapy. We do their immigration. We put them through school. We do everything. Many of them, we do STD testing. Some of them are pregnant from the Johns. So we work with Planned Parenthood. We do every service under the sun. And thus far, since our inception, we have helped over 30,000 men, women, and children.
Wow.
You started No More Tears with funding, your own funding that you had earned how?
So I was 16 and I had a crush on an Indian actor, so I moved to India to go marry him. I was 16, keep that in mind. I ended up getting engaged to him, but I also decided in order to find him, I have to join films. So I became a Bollywood actor, and I came back at 24 with almost $1 million. So what I did is I put $600,000 of that money to No More Tears, and that's how I initiated the organization.
Wow.
How are you funded now?
We do events. We have our annual luncheon, and this year I would like to give a shout out to our committee and our committee chair, Erin Newberg, because she created magic. And because of Erin, we're going to be able to save over 200 lives from the money that she raised for us.
Wow.
So we have our annual luncheon, and then we also do, small events here and there. We have private donors. And again, I must emphasize that I don't take $1 for No More Tears. Every dollar goes to the victim services program. So we're a very rare, unconventional run nonprofit. We don't have an office. We used to have an office, but I had a guy put a gun to my head. It was a trafficker. This was back in Broward, so we had to shut down the office. So we have no overheads, no office. I meet the victims at the FBI headquarters or the police departments. So all the money goes directly to the victim services programs. One more thing, we have no waiting lists. So if I usually get calls at 3 in the morning from the FBI or a police officer, fortunately I have a great boyfriend who doesn't mind being woken up by the phone, and he actually volunteers for No More Tears. So we're run very differently. We provide immediate assistance, because if a victim is being trafficked or beaten up or abused, the last thing you want to tell them is call us after 2 months because we have a waiting list. So we have private lawyers, private doctors, private therapists. We even have a mechanic that checks for GPS under their cars, because a lot of abusers put GPS trackers under their cars. So we have a dentist that has done over $60,000 worth of work for free for victims of human trafficking. So we have amazing people that support our organization.
Julie, I wanted to ask you, in listening to Marcy and to Somy about long ago abuse, did your stories shake loose any other victims? Did you hear from other victims when the story was well underway, or even after Epstein was arrested? Maybe
I was kind of surprised. I expected that I would hear from more victims. I still think that, especially early on, they felt like, well, you know, the authorities aren't going to do anything. I mean, even the victims I interviewed didn't really think, I didn't even think that they would do anything. You know, as I said, we were skeptical that anything would happen. But I will say that once he was arrested, I think, by the very nature that he was behind bars, I think a lot of victims felt safer to talk about it. So then they started coming forward to authorities. You know, I've heard that the prosecutor in New York has tripled the number of victims in New York that they had in Florida. So they are coming forward now, I think, because number one, it's become a worldwide story, and number two, he's gone. So the threat that the fear that they felt isn't as you know, isn't there to some degree.
I see. Marcy, you mentioned that the Epstein case is not quite like the Nassar case, the Olympic team doctor, or the Sandusky case, the coach? Penn State. And talk about what you see as the difference here.
So, you know, 2018 was really a tipping point for child sex abuse, because we had that 2018 grand jury report on sex abuse in the diocese across the state of Pennsylvania, which really lighted up about 25 states to start investigating. So that was huge. And then that was followed by the Nassar scandal, and the victims began to testify publicly. But what was not coming forward, and I've been working on this for 20 years, but the scandal we didn't have yet in the books was the one that involved paying the children for sex. We had plenty of grooming and behaviors to curry favor with the parents. But this story, as Julie and I talked about when she came to Penn, this was extraordinary because it was sex trafficking. And it was sex trafficking by powerful individuals. You couldn't say that it was people from outside the country bringing in people from outside the country, and so, you know, it's really not American. This is American trafficking. So when this scandal broke, I really do think it's that reporting combined with those other two events that altered the way we talk about child sex abuse now. The fact that the number of statutes this year that have been passed is 20. Last year there were 2 to get access to justice for the victims. I think it's because Julie Brown's reporting added on to all of those other scandals changed the world.
Somy, you talked about your parents. We've all talked about parents not believing you. I'm not sure if your parents are still with you, but did you ever talk to them about their unwillingness to pursue charges? Have you pursued charges to perhaps protect you in a way you expected parents to?
My parents, we have a very complicated relationship. My father is very old school. He's very, very religious, and he has made comments to my mother about how I am stupid and I'm wasting my life by doing social work. And so we don't have a good relationship. And he thinks that as a Muslim woman, I should have been married with children, 5 or 10, by now. And he thinks social work is a thankless job, and he thinks I'm wasting my time. He's also very, very perturbed with me for putting in $600,000 of my money into No More Tears. So I really don't give a shit what he thinks.
Go girl.
And you did not waste your money. You actually have turned lives around. You told me earlier that your recidivism rate is 0?
Yes, because we provide a barrage of services. And again, to reiterate, it's immediate. So the minute we get a call, we provide them with every service possible. Look, not to undermine shelters, but it's a bunk bed. They ask you to leave after 30 days. You have to give them tools to fish. You have to teach them to fish. You have to give them tools. And we offer those tools because I don't want them to go right back to the abuser in a domestic violence case or a trafficker, because why couldn't my mom and my younger brother leave? Because my dad is a millionaire in Pakistan. He's highly influential. He was beating up my mother, and we had nowhere to go because no one would take us in because my mom didn't have any formal education. She didn't have any money. So my goal is to every victim that we rescue and assist, I want her or him to stand on their own feet and become financially independent as myself. So I don't have to take crap from my dad, for one. And also, so they grow. And I mean, we've had lawyers, doctors, paralegals. The first victim we rescued got a PhD in pharmacy in 2011. Her only dream was to go to school, but she was beaten for 10 years to pursue that dream in Fort Lauderdale. And that was the happiest day of my life, and now she's a monthly donor. So yeah, no one has gone back. And I'm so proud to say that our services are so amazing that no one needs to go back.
When we talk about,
Yes.
I think the societal pattern when women are victims of rape and sexual abuse and human trafficking, when young girls get pregnant, it's always the girl's fault. It's always the woman's fault. Why did you let him do X, Y, and Z? Marcy, can you talk about what we need to know about and do to
It's not just women.
the traffickers themselves?
Well, first of all, I think it's a tragedy that Somy has to do what she's doing. The government should be doing that. And it's a failure of the United States that we are not doing that for the vast majority of the victims. And so it makes Somy's work so important. But it also means we have a lot to do. And in order to stop the traffickers, the single most important thing we must do is empower the victims. And the best way, the strongest way to empower them is to let them go to court, and not just civil lawsuits. Now, the reason New Mexico is still investigating criminal charges is because their criminal statute of limitations is eliminated. They don't have a criminal statute of limitations that is a barrier. The other 3 locations all have the same thing. So what's happening right now is that the legal system is putting handcuffs on prosecutors and trial lawyers who could help these victims. So right now in New York, the reason we're hearing about more victims is because they can get justice. And they are lining up with lawyers. I know many of the lawyers.
Because of the window?
Because of the window. I know many of the lawyers. So what we do at Child USA is we track every statute of limitations statute in the country on a weekly basis, and we advocate for the change that will make these victims powerful. The problem with the Me Too movement is that it invites the victims to talk, but it doesn't guarantee anything changes. And so too many of our victims have strode through the public square, have told their stories, have thought that was enough, but had no justice against the ones who caused it. And so we need legal change. We need to change for millions of victims at once, and the only way to do that is through this kind of legal reform.
Why does it have to be a state by state by state battle?
So, thank the framers of the Constitution. We have 50 states. Each state is sovereign over its own crimes. And the federal government cannot tell Florida what their statute of limitations will be. Now, the federal government could incentivize Florida, but I haven't heard one member of Congress yet utter the phrase, or senator, or president, clergy sex abuse, and that's the sex scandal that's been out there the longest, since 2002. They've never said the phrase. So I wouldn't put a lot of hope in the federal government solving these problems. They're fumbling on the Nassar scandal. I hope they do what Julie's talking about. But the states are where it's at, like local investigative journalism. The states can make a difference if they do.
Are there states that, say, have wiped out the statute of limitations and have opened up the window? Are there any states that are really taking human traffickers down?
Not really. Not really. And the problem is that the statute of limitations for child sex abuse, for the Sex Act, is improving, but the statute of limitations for trafficking is not improving much. It's still in many states, and for all the jurisdictions we're talking about with Epstein, it's 5 years after the event. So 5 years after a 15-year-old is sexually abused as part of a trafficking scheme, the trafficking charge expires at age 20. That's ridiculous. And Florida is part of that. So we have so much to do to empower children. We're really in the midst of the children's civil rights movement.
Well, you said you wanted people to leave upset and unhappy, and I'm upset and unhappy.
Well, if anybody wants to keep track of these issues, if you go to childusa.org, I never expected to devote my career to statutes of limitations. It is not a fancy constitutional doctrine, I'll tell you. But once I started and realized all the barriers to helping the victims and all those who would lobby against the victims, it's a life's work.
I just want to say that this is the largest criminal enterprise in the world, largest growing criminal enterprise in the world. It's a $150 billion industry. We just had an event at our luncheon. We had our main speaker, and she was given birth, literally. She's from Utah, from Germany originally. She was given birth by her parents solely to be trafficked. Wow. And her story is unbelievable. I would like to share it with all of you. I'll email it to you guys. But when she was pregnant at the age of 14, they did a C-section without anesthesia. And they took the baby out and killed it. And that trafficking cult, that whole operation in Germany is still there. She fled at the age of 15. So we have numerous cases like this. Every day I'm answering about 15 to 30 referrals a day from the FBI and the police, state attorney's office. Human trafficking, sexual abuse of children, hate crimes from the LGBTQ community. I mean, we really need to get involved. It is incumbent upon us as a society, if we're blessed, to give back and get involved. We have to do something.
How should we do that? Are there specifics that, see something, say something? Whom do we lobby? What are we asking for?
Well, finally, airports are carrying signs. Finally, Delta has gotten training. I mean, there's progress, but we still have a long way to go. And we need to do something where people are able to reach out for help. When I started No More Tears, I was working primarily with immigrant women brought here. So I would go to Arab ethnic grocery stores, Indian, Pakistani stores, grocery stores, and put brochures with henna tattoo on them in their languages, because no matter how abused they are, they want them to cook. So the victims would go in and grocery shop, and I've had victims call me from those brochures. I went to the mosque when I started out, and the Muslim cleric said, "It's Muslims like you that give us a bad name. There's no domestic violence in our culture." And I told him to fuck off, and I went on Friday to pray, because it's segregated, and I pretended to go in and pray, and I put our brochures in the bathroom in the women's section.
Go girl.
Quietly. And I had had 27 women call me for help. And this was the first year I started out. So, there's a lot of need. There's a big need. There's really a big need. And we must get, it is our business. Make it our business. We're all selfish by nature, but there's a limit of being selfish. And let's become unselfish, and let's save lives, and let's help people, and let's intervene. Let's make it our business, please.
Who could talk about the dynamic? We had an op-ed in the paper on Monday or maybe Sunday from someone who actually thwarted a human trafficking case. And it was a woman, a young woman, in the elevator of her building, and through a conversation, the young woman said, you know, my boyfriend won't let me leave, I've tried, so on and so forth. One phone call led to another, and she was rescued. However, she did not leave at first. Can someone talk about that dynamic about of not leaving?
Well, it's inevitable that the victims of sex abuse don't leave. They don't leave their families. They don't leave the trafficking situation because they have been told that everything else is so dangerous. Why don't women leave when they are brought in to be child brides in the fundamentalist Mormons? There are two answers. One is they don't have phones. They're kept away from the culture. But the second is they're threatened, and they don't understand that there is a world outside the world that they're being told about. But if I can circle back quickly to the question you just asked, Somy, what should people do? People should contact your representatives and your senators in your state and say, justice for child sex abuse and trafficking victims. And don't take no for an answer. That's really all that needs to be done. But you have to do it more than once.
And justice would look like either a window being created in this state or statute of limitations being eliminated.
Right, so statute of limitations reform even going forward. But right now what's going on is you have victims that know about perpetrators that have not told anybody yet. And there is no reason for them to tell anybody until they have the capacity of the law on their side. So we're all responsible. I completely agree with Somy. We are all responsible for the fact that most of our victims are silent.
And why don't they leave? We have a woman, a young lady, she's 32, from Costa Rica. She was brought here under the guise of being a nanny. She was sold by her best friend for $500. And the traffickers would send her photos with a gun pointed to her children's heads every time if she wouldn't comply. And she was being raped by 50 men a day. She wouldn't get fed unless she slept with 50 men a day. Many of them are Romeo pimps that become the boyfriends, and then they say, I love you, it's just sex, it doesn't mean anything else. So there are all aspects of this. And finally, she escaped, she's under our care, we're doing her immigration, she's doing well, but it's a lot of trauma. It takes forever to heal. I'm still healing from what I went through. I can't even fathom what the trafficking victims go through. I can't even fathom that.
How do you protect the women, the men, the children in No More Tears care from the traffickers who must be looking for them?
Like I said, we have safe houses, and they're not shelters, and I can't disclose where they are, but they're extremely safe. And I personally work hands-on with every victim. I bring them food, I take them to the court as I'm a certified victim advocate, and I do everything for them from A to Z, from education, enrolling them in Miami-Dade Community College, English classes, whatever. If they want to be a nail technician, I don't care. We want them to be independent, but they, under No More Tears' care, no one has ever been harmed. And that's my mission in life. And the goal is to continue this work until I can.
You say you're a second responder, and then police and FBI and and medical personnel will call you. Can a victim who has freed himself, call you directly?
Absolutely, absolutely. We help everyone, everyone that is in need. There's sexual, physical violence. We are helping a child that's 3 years old that was sodomized by his uncle. He's under our care at the moment. So we help everyone. There was a trans victim that was beaten to the pulp, who's in the ER right now. I'm going to see him in the hospital later tomorrow in the morning, and we help everyone. There's no one that we don't help. Everything that I was taught as a child, get married, gays are going to hell, I'm doing the complete opposite. So,
how do people contact you?
I'm sorry?
How do victims contact No More Tears?
So we're listed with 211. We're also listed with all the police departments, the FBI, Department of Homeland Security, and the National Human Trafficking Hotline. And then they can go to our website, and our crisis line number is there.
Marcy, what are some of the most telling statistics about human trafficking that we should know to make us gasp?
Human trafficking has become, as Somy said, a money-making venture that is extraordinary, and it's billions of dollars. I'm not sure it surpasses child images online, child pornography. I think that is now by far the largest arena where children are being sexually assaulted. But if you understand what's going on with child sex abuse just generally, it's 1 in 4 girls and 1 in 6 boys. A large percentage of that, even in the United States, is trafficking. And so for the vast majority of Americans, I don't think they understand that how much money is changing hands in order to trap these victims. And that's really where we're sitting. Now, trafficking also is linked to pornography in some ways, but to parallel with what Somy's saying about the how overseas is affecting these issues, parents in the Philippines now are doing pay-on-demand pornography for anyone who will pay a certain amount. They will sexually assault their child online, live.
Yes.
And while sometimes that's trafficking, sometimes it's not, it's part of where the world is right now, that we just have this pandemic of making children suffer so that parents and adults have what they want. I always say that the biggest problem here is adults protect adults, and not enough people protect children.
Is some of this a factor of extreme poverty around the world, and that this is lucrative for those parents?
And drug addicts. Drug addicts are selling their children. Meth, in Ohio, we have meth addicts that are selling their children to be trafficked. So there are many elements to it. We had a couple, a husband and wife, that were committing sexual acts. For each person was paying $500, and they would do whatever that person wanted them to do to their children. Raping, oral sex, everything. This was on the dark web. So that was one of our cases. Fortunately, those children are safe now.
But you know what I think is so important about the Epstein story is that you had a billionaire that was in charge of a trafficking scheme. So, you know, the parents in the Philippines unquestionably are poverty-stricken, and they're making money literally on their children. But Epstein was using wealthy men and his billions, however he attained them, in order to subjugate children to his desires and needs. And so there is no economic stratum for child sex abuse. The wealthy are engaging in it as much as the poor. But look for every category of child who is vulnerable to know who's most likely to be a victim, whether it's poverty or a broken home or disabled or LGBTQ, these kids are the most at risk and the ones that have the least help. I think the best example of this is Jerry Sandusky of Penn State. How did he get his victims? He was a genius. He created a second mile, as he called it, a nonprofit that specialized in children the age he was interested in, and that delivered children to his door for his love and affection. So what's the problem here? Children are radically vulnerable. They can't protect themselves. And if we all don't step up, and if our lawmakers don't step up, we're just gonna have more.
And keep in mind, the customers are police officers, lawyers, doctors, Department of Homeland Security officers. I'm gonna save this for Julie, but one of our very big donors, I found out, was actually a client of one of our trafficking victims, and that's what I want to talk to you about later. But he's a very, very big person, and I'm ready to expose him at some point.
You heard it here first.
The audience asks, how can we support survivors of human trafficking?
Donation, 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 donation. And we need toiletries. When we get them, they have just the clothes on their back. We can email you a list of what we need, but every dollar goes to the victim service providers, and we need funding for them, because when you apply for food stamps, you don't get them right away. What are they supposed to eat in the interim? So financial support is essential. That's number one.
Well, and I would say donate to Child USA, because if I don't, I'm going to get killed when I'm on board. I think that we're in a position where we're at a turning point. We're at a moment when we can really, really make a difference. And how can we help human trafficking victims? We can empower them so that they have the pathway to take down the people who hurt them. And the only way you do that in the United States is through the legal system.
Julie?
That's exactly right, and I had mentioned that earlier, that there are, the silence is deafening, really, considering how many victims have been speaking out lately across the country. And you don't really hear or see lawmakers anywhere addressing this in any. And it sort of is mind-boggling to me, because it seems like this has almost become an issue that could make your career as a prosecutor if you go after them. I mean, the Cosby was prosecuted because the prosecutor ran on a platform that he was going to prosecute Cosby, and he was elected on that platform. So the public needs to, I think, also question lawmakers on what they're doing and ask them, what are you doing? Are you doing anything about this epidemic that is, that we're confronted with? And, it seems that I haven't really heard from
Given the politically powerful men that we did see involved in the Epstein case, do you think that is why it's not getting traction in the halls of power? Perhaps these men are covering for their friends, covering for themselves, who knows? But it just seems to be a gimmick of an issue, but not getting any traction.
Absolutely.
Well, I mean, I can tell you that the Epstein scandal helped us get the New York bill passed. There's no question about it. The bill was signed in February of this year, and some of those victims had come forward to members of the Senate in New York right after the story came out. So actually on the issue which we spend most of our time on at this point, statute of limitations, there's a lot of activity. And it would really, really help to have the victims of human trafficking coming forward in every state where they are, and that will help with educating members of the state legislature. So Somy, I mean, to the extent that you can encourage people to step up and to, when they're safe, to be able to talk to state legislators, it can really make a difference.
Definitely, I agree.
The Super Bowl is coming, and that is just, it's just a maelstrom of human trafficking. The victims are here, they are imported here, they're shipped here. Their handlers, their traffickers, their abusers are here. An audience member asks, what should we be doing in advance of that?
So a team of our volunteers, we're going to be doing outreach. We're going to go around and approach the girls that are standing at the corners, and we're going to actually get out of the car and approach them and give them our information. And we know that the pimps are going to be at the other end of the corner watching, but I don't care. And we're going to go ahead and hand them our information. And to an extent, we're going to rent a van, and we're going to offer them that they're welcome to come in with me in the van. That's my plan.
And our plan is...
Can I add something, please? Somy, thank you. My name is Conchita Sarnoff, and I wrote Trafficking, the first book to investigate Jeffrey Epstein. It took me 10 years to publish Trafficking, which was published 2016, April.
Wow.
And what you're doing is incredible, and one of the things that I'd like you to look at is the fact that foster care in the state of Florida accounts for 40%. I'm an advocate of trafficked children, and foster care accounts for 40% of trafficked children in the state of Florida. And the Florida Senator Lauren Book is working on a bill which will hopefully pass January 2020. It's a truckers bill, because
Yes.
truckers, as you know, account for a large percentage. So
Okay, thank you very much for that information.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
What can journalists be, go ahead.
So,
Yeah.
we don't end the problem of trafficking at sporting events without the NFL, the NBA, or MLB stepping up.
Of course.
They have to exclude this aspect of the game. And frankly, I think if they don't, they're going to lose the game. It's increasingly unpopular to have a sport that is involved in so much domestic violence and sexual assault. So one of the things that we're doing with a large consortium of organizations is to pressure the major sports groups to take a much more proactive measure to start spending their money on this. They're making billions, and they're ignoring the suffering of children.
What's been the response?
I have a meeting next week, I'll let you know.
We reached out to Goodell, we never heard back.
You reached out to,
Roger Goodell, we never
He
heard
won't
back.
respond.
Nothing.
No.
I tried twice. Nothing. Absolutely nothing.
again, the money.
Yep, of course.
I actually think we're gonna make a difference. I actually think it will change. They have to. They don't have a choice. 2 years ago, I would have said they still had a choice. I don't think they have a choice anymore.
Julie, as a journalist, someone asks, how can the community unite? How can journalism help us unite to fight human trafficking in this community, which I think is the #1 location in the country for human trafficking?
It's one of the top.
It's one of the
Florida is
top,
one of the top.
yeah.
Number 3.
You know, there's a number of different things that can be done, but, you know, the issue doesn't end with, you know, the Jeffrey Epstein case. You know, we need to keep pursuing the problem and writing about other cases. And I think that that's the challenge, especially at a time when, you know, there's dwindling resources for newspapers like the Herald. And so, you know, I think that's one of the things we'd like to do with this foundation that we're starting to do, you know, to take these cases a step further and not only just cover what happened, but what people can do to make it not happen again.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's not just the U.S. There are women and men being brought. And I also want to talk about, we really need to emphasize that men are trafficked as well. Young boys are trafficked as well. And, you know, there are a lot of women and men being brought from different countries that are being trafficked. And they have no social support system. They don't speak the language. We have a huge battle. And we can't give up. We have to keep fighting for these people to save their lives.
Julie, I want to give you the last word on just everything we've been talking about tonight. We are talking about human trafficking, but of course Epstein looms large still. Just how should we go forth?
Well, you know, I always, when I get this question a lot, I always point out that the importance of local newspapers, really, and local journalism. You know, there are journalists all over the country that are trying to do this kind of work. I'm fortunate that the Miami Herald has been so committed to it. But I think it's important that people really subscribe and they pay attention to what's happening in their communities. So, you know, I think that the more that we are able to support newspapers and journalists, the more that we'll understand exactly how big of a problem something like trafficking is.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Please let's thank Somy Ali.
Hi, it's Veronica again, and thank you for hanging in there and watching this video. And I'm going to thank you in advance for subscribing, sharing, thumbs up, notifications, share it on all your social media, because we need to wake up the world. There are too many asleep people to what's going on, and child trafficking, human trafficking is a lot more prevalent than people know. Actually, it's what people refuse to understand. They refuse to see willful ignorance, turning the blind eye, which I think is the worst thing you could possibly do, turning a blind eye, especially to a child. The most vulnerable among us is a child. And these predators know this. And it goes well beyond a sex thing. That's another thing, you know, people have this misnomer thinking it's just about sex. It's about, you know, you're horny, you know, something like that. There's something particularly evil about the molestation and the trafficking of children. You can't deny it. You don't need to believe in God to understand that there's something very nefarious going on here, which will come out. It will come out. And it's best to get informed now, understand just how deep it goes, how deep-seated it is in our society. And I'm not just talking Western. It's all over this world. These kids come from everywhere. Okay? Epstein just happened to be a keystone, a linchpin. That's why I was referring. He's that linchpin right in the center, that needs to be plucked out, and the rest of the arch cannot stay stable once he was plucked out. So this case did not die when Epstein died. Eye roll, okay? It did not die when Epstein died. Even Julie K. Brown knows it and mentioned it. So she's going to persist, and she's going to keep pursuing, as well as all these other women. I wish there were some men up there to represent, because I do know many men who are fighting the good fight also. You know, it's not just about, you know, just saying it's only women are standing up for these children, only women understand the dangers and the horrors of trafficking. It is men also. And you heard Somy mentioned her own brother also was raped by the same people who raped her. So do not discount the boys. Do not discount the men who are also very much in there fighting the good fight. Okay? So thank you again. Share, subscribe, and tune in for video number 3. Video number 3 will be coming up this week, okay, where I will do some investigative reporting. And I will share some articles with you more on this topic of trafficking, but also I do plan on covering the what is going on, the social warfare going on right now on our children, for our children's minds. Okay, so Veronica out. We got this. Love you guys. Bye.